Hi, I'm Addie, and welcome to this episode of Over a Cup of Coffee.
And I'm Jamie, and this podcast is all about two friends talking about everything under the sun all over a cup of coffee. So thank you for joining us. Hi, it's Jamie Church, and welcome to Over a Cup of Coffee, the podcast where we talk about everything over a cup of coffee. So my co-host is...
Hi, I'm Addie Betancourt, and welcome back. Super excited to be here today.
We are really excited about this episode. This has probably been one of the more complicated episodes we've ever done because we have live guests and we also have virtual guests through Zoom. And just to show you this is a real thing and we are real people, I raced in here seriously 30 seconds before we started recording with hair flying and late. And so thanks for everybody being so patient. But I want to go ahead and introduce our guests, our very special guests. First by Zoom, we have Kayla and Morgan with Risen Warrior Coffee Company. And where are you all based out of again?
We are out of Lisbon, Iowa.
Okay. And we've got our in-studio guests. We have Mark Fetzer and Jared Slindy, correct?
Yep, that's right.
With the Guardian Initiatives. And I think for Addie and I, one of the most exciting podcasts we've done to date, right?
So far, yeah. And it's our fourth podcast. So it's really cool to kind of have, celebrities is how I feel about it. On both ends, having you guys from out of state joining us virtually, it's just small town Farmington, and to be able to do something on this level for what all of you guys are doing on a grand scale is just going to be really cool for everybody to hear.
So just to remind our audience that's outside of the area, we're from Farmington, New Mexico, which is in the northwest corner of New Mexico in an area known as the Four Corners. And we talk a lot about what's happening in our own community, but the main point of the podcast is community building no matter where you are. So we believe strongly that everybody has the potential and the responsibility to make their community the best place that it can be while they're there. And so that's why we're very excited about today's podcast. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So Mark and Jared, you all have a project which is your Guardian Initiative. So can you talk real quickly about what that is, and then we'll bring in Kayla and Morgan.
Yeah. Mark and I created a nonprofit, like you said, Guardian Initiatives. And our main purpose is to help people within our community that have been negatively affected by tragic events.
What else? That's one of the best things you can do.
Right.
There's so many people that are impacted, and there's long-term, there's stress, and there's, these things go on long-term, and it's just nice for people to know there's people looking out for them. So,
yeah.
Great. So what's the project? What's your...
Sure. So, the name of our organization, Guardian Initiatives, plural, because we plan on having multiple initiatives. But for our very first one, Jared and I are both in law enforcement here locally, and we decided that we would do our first one to raise awareness and support for our first responders, mental wellness and suicide prevention for our Four Corners area.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
So Kayla and Morgan, so I have some of your coffee. I'm going to try to hold it out to the camera. And so I have props today. This is the Atlantic Grind, and your coffee company is called Risen Warrior Coffee. So how did you meet Mark and Jared? How did you all get involved with this?
So Mark actually reached out to us. As we started a campaign, we have a staple campaign that we run, which is a tribute blend, and the proceeds go back to families of fallen officers. And so we ran one of those, and Mark came across it and actually reached out to us, and we made contact with them several months ago, actually, and this just all kind of came into play. So
you roast your own coffee and then you sell it, for example, like you're doing with this, the Risen Warrior blend that I have, the Atlantic, to help raise money. But then do you also have a coffee shop, an actual brick and mortar when people can come in?
We're not brick and mortar. Actually, in the past, I've owned a brick and mortar shop, which is how we kind of stayed in the coffee community. But with everything that happened last year, as we relaunched a business, we just thought, let's do it online. Let's do it e-commerce. And let's reach a wider variety and a wider audience of people. So that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Okay, so you have where if you buy a pound of the coffee, the proceeds go to their project, correct?
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. So you have just a little thing going on right now with rowing across the Atlantic.
Yeah, we
Tiny thing.
yeah, just a little. We this is obviously a great cause and something that we really need to pay attention to within our own community, but we really wanted to capture the attention of everybody, and we figured getting a small boat and rowing across the Atlantic Ocean was going to get everybody's attention, and so far it has. And so if we're talking about rowing across the ocean, we're going to be talking about mental wellness, and that's what we need to be doing. So
Right. So when you say rowing, like, do you have a motor in that boat? I've looked at the picture. Are you literally rowing?
Yeah, you're literally rowing. It's a boat. It's about 26 foot long, 5 to 6 feet wide, and we're a team of 4, and 2 of us will row, while the other 2 are off and eating, sleeping,
Resting.
resting, and you just row. You just literally row across the Atlantic Ocean in a boat.
That's so cool.
So-
That is so cool. So you're gonna have to overcome a lot of mental anguish probably with that. How are you guys training for this?
Well, our race is in December of 2022, so we've still got a bit of time. But we're going to have our boat here shortly, here in probably July, and we're going to do a lot of our training out on Navajo Lake. Basically, just doing runs up in the canyons and all day, and just really learning the boat and training in that way. But there's also the other elements, lifting weights and getting on the row machine at the house and running and stuff of that nature. So
There's a big mental element to it. You kind of,
Right, yeah.
hinted to that, and it's one of those things that's harder to train for, right?
Right.
I mean, in being so far out, there's the mental preparation, knowing what we're going to be facing as we talk to other teams and watch videos. You kind of start seeing what that is.
Right.
But it really, for us, I think too, the part of what helps us on the mental side is knowing the cause we're doing, the need for it, and for us to push
Right.
through.
Right,
And-
something bigger than
Right.
each one of us,
Correct.
and giving you that strength to get through it.
Correct.
How
Do you
cool.
have statistics on suicide with first responders, or as you mentioned, fallen warriors and their families, or military that have come back? What are the statistics on suicide?
Great question. So there are statistics out there. There's some organizations that keep track, and when we look at for first responders, like for instance law enforcement, there's an organization, Officer Down Memorial, who keep track of line of duty deaths. So those are officers who've been killed, in a car wreck or killed by a bad guy. And for instance, in 2020, there was 128 line of duty deaths for law enforcement nationwide.
Wow.
And there was 171 suicides.
Oh my gosh.
And what's even more tragic on that is the line of duty deaths are tracked very well. The agencies keep those numbers very well. Those are reported. The suicides are not. So the organizations that track those, like Blue Help on the police side, anticipate that to only be about 60% reported. So that 171 is far more. Same thing on the fire side. 2019, 62 line of duty deaths and 96 suicides on the fire side. The numbers aren't as tracked as well for EMS yet, or dispatchers, which we also consider as part of our cause. There are organizations like Firefighter Behavioral Health that are starting to track those more regularly.
And I have wondered after COVID, with the number of hospital, nurses and doctors and EMS and first responders that had to be there with COVID patients in their final moments and being that go-between. We've heard lots of stories about people, doctors or nurses zooming in family with the patients in their last moments. And I've wondered about what kind of long-term stress or grief counseling might be needed, because this was beyond anything we've ever seen before in our country, in our world. And so I kind of wonder about that long-term as well with those medical people.
I would agree that there's definitely a need there. And you're talking to, while we're working for first responders, talking to doctors, that's a huge issue for physicians as well, healthcare professionals. So
Right.
it's a big problem in a lot of different areas that we see.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the mental health industry, because of the journey I've been on personally, I don't feel that they're always up to speed with what we're truly dealing with in our heads, and how to actually overcome. How far back do you go in therapy? How, where are we digging to pull out those deeper pieces so we can start overcoming each one? And I can only imagine with first responders and policemen and firemen and military personnel, where it was the trauma only experienced in the line of duty, or did you go into that particular career path because you did experience a trauma maybe as a child, so then you become the protector for all the people? And so how far back in that mental health path are we going to go to repair so we don't lose another person?
Right.
So
it's definitely complex. The more we learn about it, the more we study it, it's definitely a complex system. And I think getting there's so many portions to a good wellness program or plan, individual plan, and what we come on board with, prior experiences. Well, that's a big thing, and taking care of those. And we talk about it in the first responder side. Our glass is filling up. Things we experience. Right. Sometimes it's a big incident. Sometimes it's more often a lot of smaller incidents. Our glass is going to fill up if we don't empty it when and where we want to.
Right.
It's going to overflow when we don't. And so that can include those past experiences as well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to Morgan and Kayla again about coffee and community, because that to me is a big deal. And I know it seems trivial, but I was looking at your website and I felt like you and I were kind of on the same lines, is that coffee and getting together over coffee can make a lot of positive difference. You had some really great things on your website about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of aligning with the mental health, my background is mental health and trauma. And so when we were kind of talking about what do we want to do, we want to make an impact, we want to stay in coffee because we love coffee. And we started thinking, like, what makes a difference in people's lives? And it's exactly like what you said. It's sitting down, it's taking time, it's fellowship, it's relationship. That's what makes a difference in people's lives. And we really believe that can be what saves a life. Is having that somebody that's in the trenches with you. And so that was really what this was all founded on, is if we can connect with people, even if it's a bag of coffee or a cup of coffee, what kind of impact can we make with that? So
it's giving me goosebumps, because that's how we feel. And we actually came up with this podcast idea over a cup of coffee, because Addie and I, we would get together for coffee every Saturday, and we were friends, and we talked about all sorts of things, our lives, our children, our jobs, and especially during COVID, we were getting, she'd come over to my house when we couldn't go to coffee shops, and we finally one day over coffee said, we should do a podcast. And then we did, and we called it Over a Cup of Coffee, because that's how it started. But we also feel that just those personal relationships, again, over a cup of coffee, but just spending time, could be the difference, could be the thing that maybe helps somebody get through that day. And maybe that's just what they needed, is to connect, and they just needed a chance. So
having somebody, like you said, having that connection with somebody to know that you're not the only one going through what you're going through. And with Jamie and I, everybody, the world stopped last year, but Jamie and I, with what we do in the public eye with both of our businesses, we had to keep going every single day, and there was no off switch for what we were doing, and our outreach that we also provide in multiple communities. And so it was, for me, it was vital to know that on a professional side of things, Jamie was going through the same things I was going through. And then it would give me kind of that, okay, I can go and finish helping the other people that I help. And Jamie could go do the same things. And we could also be 110% for our children and anybody else that was in our lives. So.
And I would say too, that's huge in the first responder field, and in our early talks with Kayla and Morgan and their connection with it, and this whole our mission's kind of aligning as well. But with the first responders, I encourage all of, especially our new guys, go out, have conversations with people, have relationships with people, especially outside of the profession. Keep in mind, there's, cops are really bad at it, and it doesn't help our mental health of, we tend to stick around other cops. And Jared and I are going to row across the ocean together. It's like, we need someone else. But, we tend to start viewing things in a skewed way.
Right.
And so if you do take that time, and cops like coffee, so if we do take that time and have those relationships outside, to like what you're saying, it helps us stay grounded, and not just cops, everybody.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Jared, how much money did you all have to raise?
Well, we have a goal of raising $100,000 a year,
Okay.
and so we've started. Of course, our nonprofit was started in 2019. We wanted to raise $100,000 a year. COVID set us back a bit, but we've absolutely been blessed with the businesses here locally and personal donations locally of helping us out even during this pandemic. But we've raised about $80,000, and that's super cool during COVID when money's almost non-existent for some of these businesses. So, but yeah, we've been able to do good with some of that money. Part of our leg with Guardian is to bring in training for local clinicians, and we were able to put on a training for about 150 clinicians throughout the state, a lot of them here in Four Corners area, and just basically help them understand the need and how to deal with a first responder and how to talk to a first responder. They don't necessarily know how we operate and the things we see and things we do. And so we're able to put on a pretty large virtual training for our local clinicians to really help the first responders here locally.
Understand the culture.
And we do, as we mentioned, this podcast goes everywhere beyond Farmington. So if somebody's listening, no matter where in the country, how would they donate? If they wanted to contribute to what you all are doing, how would they donate? How would they find you to do that?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, our website, guardianinitiatives.org. That's the main way to donate to us. Of course, you can mail us any type of donations through the mail. Yeah, all our information's on our website. More about our cause and who we are and what we're trying to accomplish is on our website.
Videos of ocean rowing.
Okay.
I was watching some of those.
And if they wanted to buy coffee from you to support this, how would they find you to do that, to buy coffee?
They can go to risenwarriorcoffee.com. And we actually have a heading that's Impact Coffee, and this one is under there. So along with several other causes and our staple coffee. So
that's great. I love this. Aren't you? I mean, this is just great. So. Yes. How big is the boat?
It's about 26 foot long and only about 5 foot wide. And if you think about it, we have to be able to sit in the middle and have 2 oars in the water. So it's not very big. And there'll be 4 of us on it.
And all your supplies?
All of our supplies are kept on the boat. We're not we don't take on any extra support. This is a race. It's called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. I say, a marathon's a race. And there's a couple people in there to win, and there's a lot of people in there to finish. We're in there to finish and finish safely and end as better friends than what we started. But with the race and rules, we can't take on any outside support.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. So. Okay. And your other 2 members, are they?
Still looking.
You're still looking. Jamie.
Oh, Addie. Here we go.
I told you I needed an adventure after the book.
I know. Well, we're going to audition for Mamma Mia, and now we're going to be as part of this
we're going to race.
I know. This is awesome. So, well, anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about your book, if that's okay.
Sure.
So Mark has a book, again, props for the camera, but I'll talk about it. So Mark wrote a book along with Jack Galvin called Within Reach about Everest. Yes. And I wanted to read it because we always do book reviews as part of this podcast because, again, we want to talk about what's happening in our community, but also, books, and you tend to read more nonfiction, and I read mostly fiction. So this was great for me because it is nonfiction.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
it
right.
is nonfiction.
It was
just
right
make it up.
It was right up my alley.
So you were the youngest person to ever summit Everest. Is that correct?
Close.
Okay.
Close. Okay.
All right.
So when I was 15 years old, I made my first attempt on Mount Everest, and at the time, had I summited, I would have been the youngest. Now, I didn't summit on my first attempt.
Was that the broken rib
That was
attempt?
a broken rib
Okay.
attempt, yep.
Okay.
1995 on the north side of Everest. I went back the following year, 96, to try it again. Still would have been the youngest by a year. At the time, the youngest was 17-year-old Frenchman. And I would have been the youngest, but that was 96, and then I was caught in the storm, the famous storm of Everest in 1996, where lots of people died. They just made the movie a few years ago
Right.
about it. I was in that storm. I was at high camp. We were a day behind those teams, and so I turned around with every intention of going back up for a third attempt, but never made that back up. So I held a few other records for being the youngest to climb some other mountains, Choi Yu being one of them, and I'm sure it's been broken since because it was a long time ago, but I was 16 years old climbing. That's the 6th highest mountain in the world, and that's a few other ones as well, but I chronicled it all in the book, Within Reach.
And I know Addie's been listening to it because I bought the last copy that you could get on Amazon. So you've been listening to it too.
Yeah, I listened to it, and it was just great. I finished it this morning. I was telling you when I got here, like the last 30 minutes of the book, I had tears. 'Cause, it was just the whole culmination of the journey, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, like, what's been the rest of, what happened after that? What happened with your dad? It was just heartbreaking, but so neat. Because I always make the comment, find your Everest. And, and that's not one of my goals to climb Everest, but I've climbed many in my lifetime. And so, I think that whether they read it or listen to it, I think it's an important message, just learning how to overcome so many different things and having that focus, that laser line focus on what your goal is and achieving it. And it just, it just kind of brought back so many different things that I've overcome in the last 5 years alone. But thinking on other people too, so many other people that get sidetracked on they lose sight of what they're doing because something comes in and rattles them. And it's like, so, but one of the things before I go any further, I need to ask you, what are uglies?
Uglies, I guess they're also called Supermans.
We said we weren't going to do
I called them uglies because they were just ugly looking exercise to me, but they worked well. So Supermans,
Yeah, 'cause
lower
I was
back.
like, is it burpies? Is it, all those ones we don't like to do.
Yeah, I still don't like them.
I don't blame you.
No, being so young doing it, I had a very supportive family and, a family that wasn't adventurous like that by any means. My dad didn't like to travel. My mom was into horses, and that was about the extent of it. I grew up fishing. And so, but doing it so young, it did teach me a lot then about perseverance and, things. Since then, I climbed a little bit after that. My dad passed away in 97, which was, he never climbed with me, but was a big part of my climbing for me. We were very close, and he was a first responder. To tie all this back in, he was actually a first responder, not to get off track, but who had suffered mental wellness issues from the job. So, personal there going into the guardian stuff. I climbed a little bit, and then life hit, I always say. I had to get a job, had to graduate high school and get a job, and but it's always stuck with me. Those lessons learned have always stuck with me on the perseverance and working hard and not being afraid to look big. And I think that's part of what getting into the row stuff, when Jared and I first started talking about it, when he said, let's do it, I was like, okay, you don't have to convince me much on that. So lots of lessons learned. And, I do a lot of talks to schools, and trying to relay that to the kids, in terms of, go for your dreams, push hard. It's funny you say climb your Everest. We've got this now, conquer your 3,000.
Oh, I love
We're
it.
doing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic.
Oh,
and
that's
saying
great. Ooh.
Everybody's got a 3,000, right?
Yes.
Whether that's a mental wellness issue, whether that's an issue, something they want to do, something holding them back. So we're talking conquer your 3,000 along the same lines.
I like that so much. I'm going to add that one.
Well, and we all do have our 3,000. And, even with COVID, and Kayla, you guys were talking about keeping the coffee shop going after COVID. I mean, we all had a year of reevaluating businesses closing down, but also new opportunities. And have you found that your business with the coffee has stayed the same, or have you increased since you've gone more on the online?
So we actually just have been online.
Okay.
Brick and mortar was several years ago. And I actually jumped into the nonprofit world for a while. And then we actually just restarted in coffee last fall. So we have seen actually a really good response though. We get a lot of messages from people still. And so there's still this really cool connection, even though we are entirely online, which is awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
I have my youngest son is, I am going to ask you when we're done to autograph this book so I can send it to him. My youngest son reminds me so much of you from your description.
He's a climber,
and
right?
He is a climber, and he runs a coffee shop. So I feel like this is all coming together. He actually goes to Mexico and climbs in an area called Puerto Chico, and he runs the coffee shop there, which is actually a mission. All the money raised in the coffee shop goes to support the middle school there in this area of Puerto Chico where he climbs. The name of the coffee shop is El Bujo, and he does all this coffee stuff. So, and then he's this huge adventure climber. He's my one that, just like you, came to his dad and I when he, was like 17, and I'm going to go work in a refugee camp in Syria for 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, kind of like, sure, you figure it out, you get the support, and he did. So I really, in your book, I related to your parents because it's hard with children. We want them to explore and follow their dreams and follow their adventure, whatever it is, but it's also really hard sometimes
to not have that protective
right
wings around them at
right.
all.
So I really related to your parents, and it reminded me so much of my youngest son. And then he has the coffee thing going too.
Yeah.
Right now he's working at a brew pub in Texas, so he lives a fun little life, that one. But
he does.
So anyway, the book I felt was just, I haven't quite finished it yet. You can see where I am, but I loved the idea of sticking with it and persevering, and just the way you learned to talk to sponsors and the way you really went after this. So I just found it to be very, very good. So it was,
you.
Yes.
yeah. But this, back to the rowing. So 3,000 miles, 4 of you. Where do you take off from? Where do you start?
It's a small island called La Gomera. It's off the west coast of Africa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we all the teams start there, and then we go across and we land in Antigua.
Oh,
So yeah, it'll be a nice getaway for our wives, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Not so much for us. But
Right.
Yeah. No, it'll be good. The average, I guess the world record is 29 days to complete it. I don't know that we're gonna get close to that. I got a bit of a belly I need to work on here, but we're thinking anywhere between 30 to 40 days to finish it.
Okay.
So, but
okay.
Which is why we need good coffee.
Yeah.
that's right.
Yes.
Rowing 2 hours
And this
at a
actually
time.
is really good coffee. We brewed a pot just before we came on air so that we could be drinking it. It's actually very, very good coffee. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm going to have to order some more.
Yeah.
And support the cause. So you said you take off and you end up in Antigua. And then are there any stops along the way?
Nope. You just row.
Keep going.
Just row until you
Holy
get there.
cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no support along the way. If we need help, we can radio in like a sailboat that'll come get us. But
Okay.
it could be anywhere between a day, 3 days, 5 days.
depending on storms
Yeah.
and stuff probably
Yeah.
too.
Mhm. Yeah, and they go along the race course, but they're not necessarily next to you. So they may be at the front of the pack, and someone needs help in the back of the pack. It's going to take them time to get there to get to whoever needs to be rescued. So, but we don't have any intentions of being rescued.
no.
So, but
Well, no, and you got to
Wow.
go into it. That I
How
know,
do you-
just what an adventure.
I know. And I think, because I take, whether I'm leaving for 1 day or 5 days, I take a gigantic suitcase. And it's not that, it's just that, how do you even compartmentalize all of that into a 5-foot wide boat?
Bringing the essentials only.
Yeah.
But I mean, these boats are specifically designed for ocean rowing, ocean
Cubbies
crossing.
and all of those
So
things.
yes, everything is, you're using every bit of space on the boat that we can. So, but it'll, every bit we carry, we have to haul across the water.
Right.
Row and
Right.
so.
Wow, I know. And I thought Mamma Mia would be an adventure. So thank you guys so much. We're actually going to start wrapping up. I really appreciate you all being here with us virtually. So it's Risen Warrior Coffee. What's your Facebook? It's Risen Warrior Coffee on Facebook.
Risen Warrior Coffee Company. Yep.
Okay. And then what's your website?
RisenWarriorCoffee.com.
Okay. So they can contact you, buy coffee, support causes, and thank you all so much.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Within reach. And then one more time, how can they support you if they want to make a donation?
We're on Facebook, Instagram, and our website's guardianinitiatives.org.
Are you going to be doing any other kind of events before you go?
Yeah.
Fundraising events? I should have asked
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we wanted to do a bunch last year,
Sure.
but of course, you know how that worked out. But yeah, we have plans to do some events this year. We'll probably be up at the dam doing events with the boat and give people the opportunity to look at the boat and see the boat and be on the boat.
That's what I was going to
So-
ask is when the boat comes in, I
Yeah.
like
Take people out
message me.
for rides.
I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be,
I want to go.
So conquer your Everest. What was on the back of the
Conquer
mug
your
again?
3000.
Conquer your 3000. All right. Thanks.
Thank
and
you.
thank you for joining us for Over a Cup of Coffee. We'll see you next time.